Matt Miller is one of the busiest people on the planet, but he carved out a couple minutes to chat with us today. So, first and foremost, happy draft season. We appreciate you taking the time. And as we get ready for the draft, I'm actually going to peel it back a little bit. We're going to go back in time to 2020. So, the Bills, they had Zach Moss, AJ Epinesa, Gabriel Davis, Tyler Bass. As we look back a year down the road, how do you think the Bills did in their last draft back in 2020?
Well, I think you have to love the fact that that draft helped you get to the AFC Championship game, even if you fall a little bit short, to see the development of that team. And I think they drafted a lot of players who we didn't expect to be like year one great contributors. And that's kind of become a staple of this team under Brandon and Sean is let's draft guys who can be developed, like an Ed Oliver. So I was a huge AJ Epinesa fan, so I loved that selection. I think we'll continue to see Gabriel Davis have a bigger role in the offense. There's Zach Moss in the run game. Probably didn't end up where they wanted it to be when they made that selection, which is a position I think we'll probably talk about they could be interested in at 30 overall. But to see this team continue to develop and get farther into the playoffs every year, and we've also seen some teams, like you get to that AFC title game and you lose, a lot of times you're making it back to and you're going to the Super Bowl the following year. The Chiefs did that, losing to the Patriots. Next year, they're in the Super Bowl. So I think the Bills have to feel really good about where they are and the fact that they have a lot of young players, not just from 2020, but 2019 as well, who are just starting to really climb that ladder of becoming the pros that we think they'll be.
Everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks in this draft, and I totally understand it. We were doing it a couple years ago with the Josh Allen draft. But for the Bills, they could really go any way. They're not going to draft a quarterback, but there's so many different options. Right. And I think right now the betting favorite, at least if you ask people here in Buffalo, would probably be cornerback. For you, one, does that seem realistic? And two, who are the guys who could be available to them at 30?
It is realistic. I've had conversations with people within the Bills organization, and what they say is they need playmakers, whether that's on offense or defense. They need playmakers. I think corner is interesting because that spot opposite Trey White is open. And so players who could be available, Greg Newsome, the second from Northwestern, who is very long, very aggressive, he would certainly fit the mold. Other late first rounders, Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State is probably in that conversation. Tyson Campbell from Georgia, another big, long, fast player. Part of the problem for the Buffalo Bills is the teams are ahead of them, directly ahead of them in this draft, have a lot of the same needs. So you have to look at the Green Bay Packers might steal a corner from you. The New Orleans Saints might steal a corner from you. And there are 3 to 4 really good corners in this class, and then there is a bit of a drop-off. So I think that is a situation where it's sometimes unfortunate when other teams might know what your plan is or what your biggest need might be.
What's your take on Farley? How are the medicals on him?
Yeah, I actually did some reporting on this. I'm a huge fan of Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech, but the medicals are concerning to some teams. I know Caleb declared himself ready to go. I don't know how much stock we can always put into that. Teams I've talked to said he'll be back, just a matter of when. The timeline is very much up in the air. It's not week one like was reported by the player and the agent. So I think Farley, if he's there at 30, it would surprise me. But if he's there, it is a very good risk if your doctors have signed off on him. You know, the 2 back surgeries, he's actually had a knee injury as well. Those are big question marks, but on just traits alone, he might be the best corner in this class. And the Bills have really gotten lucky before with a great corner falling down the board. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll just take this guy now. So he stops falling and he becomes one of the best in the game. So if Farley's there, I think you have to weigh the risk and reward with the medicals, but he could be an exceptional steal.
So you mentioned Epinesa. Obviously, he did not have as big of an impact maybe as some people expected in his rookie season, but I think most people assume that he is going to take a step forward this year. But I also don't think that takes edge rusher off the board for the Bills at 30. So if there is somebody who's around kind of at that end of the first round, is there anybody who stands out to you?
Yeah, this edge class is really deep because it's not top heavy. There's not a Chase Young, you know, so it's a very deep class. I would look at going almost with a contrast to what you have in AJ Epinesa, who's a bigger player, a smaller pass rusher like a Jason Owe from Penn State, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, Joseph Osai from Texas, adding a little bit of speed to go with the power of Epinesa. I think it's a smart way to build out your pass rush group. And also, you're starting to find guys who, as a rookie, can be very good on third down. They can be very good in situational roles when you get those speed rushers because you can just throw them out there and let them pin their ears back and go get the quarterback.
We'll switch it to the other side of the ball. Obviously, like Kyle Pitts, those guys are going to be way gone. Is there
Sadly.
Yeah. Unless Brandon gets really crazy and decides.
Right.
Is there, though, a tight end that's worth that late first-round pick?
Yeah, I think so. The question is, will he be there? And it's Pat Freiermuth from Penn State. There's a lot of buzz that the Jacksonville Jaguars love him. So he might not be available at pick 30. Otherwise, there is not. I love Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame. 30 would be too early for him. So you're really looking at a position where maybe it's late round 2, maybe it's even round 3 with someone like Hunter Long from Boston College. I actually really like Dawson Knox coming out of college. There's some development that needed to happen there. He actually didn't catch a touchdown in college, which I'm sure you guys have talked about. But I think we saw flashes last year where maybe you would like to pair someone with him. But, I mean, obviously, if you can get Kyle Pitts, that changes everything. I don't think the Bills will be swinging that high to make that trade. But other than him, I kind of like what the Bills have at that group right now.
And then, so I'm going to take you to Buffalo here. For the last, let's say, 3 months since the AFC Championship ended, all everybody's been talking about is adding playmakers. And of course, when you talk about adding playmakers, you look at Najee Harris, you look at Travis Etienne, and it's very divided. Half the fan base thinks, yes, let's go get a running back. They're weapons. The other half is like, no, you're crazy. You don't take a first-round running back. So to you, are either of those guys worth that big of a pick, a first-round pick?
I think so. And I'll tell you, don't throw anything through the screen at me. I'm very close to Kansas City here. And what did they do last year? They took a running back at 32 overall because they wanted someone who could take that offense over the top. It didn't happen for them, and they probably wish they had drafted a tackle. But the understanding was Clyde Edwards-Helaire would open up the pass game. He would give Mahomes that dump off. And I think with Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, or even Javonte Williams, North Carolina, those are 3 running backs who are worth the number 30 pick. And part of that is I'm on the team. Like, drafting a running back in the first round is hard. But if you can draft a running back who can contribute early, you have 5 years of a very inexpensive, very valuable player. Second contract is a much different conversation, right? But 5 years of a very inexpensive running back at pick 30, I do think is a good value if there's not someone on the board. If the corners are gone, if you don't want to go wide receiver that early, then I think you have to look at the running backs, especially guys like Najee Harris who catch the ball so well, and say, gosh, that would be really nice to have against that, sub-package Kansas City Chiefs defense. Or that'd be really nice to have against the Miami Dolphins, someone who can, late in the year when it's 12 degrees in Buffalo, it's 230 pounds, you can run him between the tackles and he can catch the ball in the flats and make really nice things happen.
Matt, my last question for you. Finish this sentence. The 2021 draft will be a success for the Buffalo Bills if
they find a starter, a day one starter. I praised Brandon Beane's philosophy of let's draft and develop guys. That got you here. They're the second best team in the AFC before the draft. Now you have to find that playmaker, as they said, someone who can put you over the top, whether it's a corner, a pass rusher, a running back. They just have to find that player that when you walk out on the field, the other team's afraid of. You have that in Trey White. You have it in Josh Allen. It's time to get another one.
Matt, where can everybody find your work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously ESPN covering the draft, and then any of my written content folks can find at thedraftscout.com.
Thank you so much for joining us, and happy draft season.
Yeah, thank you so much.